Greetings from Tokyo. This is Daisuke Beppu. How are you doing today? Happy Halloween. I hope your October is going well and that you are watching a lot of great scary films. Today I would like to talk to you about a very interesting film directed by Dario Argento from 1985. Phenomena. This is the Arrow limited edition release, which is this really nice box, and this has the book, which has some really nice essays and pictures. Look at that. Right. It's a very nice book, by the way. Arrow is really top-notch label when it comes to their supplements and their packaging and the books as well. The release, however, is very special because it has, well, let me tell you what it has in terms of supplements before I go any further. So in terms of supplements, there is a commentary by Troy Howarth, the Argento expert, and it's a really fantastic commentary, by the way. Then there is a documentary called The Three Sarcophagi, a new visual essay by Michael Mackenzie comparing the different cuts of phenomena. Okay, I'll get to that in a minute. And there is a huge documentary here about the making of the film with many players involved, including Dario Argento and Fiore Argento, Dario Nicolodi, Luigi Cozzi, Franco Ferrini, etc. It's a fantastic, dense, packed documentary. One of the great making of documentaries that I've seen in a while regarding a horror film. And let's see, then we have trailers and the booklet. Yes. So let me then talk about the versions of the film that are made available through this limited edition release. So there are 3 cuts available. There is the long cut, which is 116 minutes. Then there is the 110-minute cut. Then there is the third version, which is 83 minutes, I want to say. Is it 83? Yes, 83 minutes, and this is called Creepers. Now, this is a slightly re-edited version, truncated for the American market, and it has a different title. It's not called Phenomena, it's called Creepers. It has a nice documentary called The Three Sarcophagi, which goes through in detail about the differences between these 3 cuts. The 116-minute version, the 110-minute version, and the 83-minute version. So it's a very helpful resource if you're looking for a nice explanation on that front. Now, I know the film more in terms of its 110-minute version, but I have seen the 160-minute version a number of times, thanks to this release. And Creepers as well I've seen thanks to this release. So I've seen Creepers before, a long time ago when I was a child, because that was the only version I could see at the time. But again, this was a real, just a marvelous release from Arrow, and it's highly recommended if you can still get it. I'm not sure if the non-limited release of Phenomena has the same number of cuts. If you know the information about the standard release from Arrow, please let me know, and maybe you can leave a comment, so maybe I and maybe some other people who are watching this video can get that information. So anyway, that is a little bit of background regarding the release by Arrow of the film Phenomena. So now I will go into spoilers and detail about this film. So if you don't want to be spoiled, please, I urge you just to turn off this video right now or put it on pause and go ahead and watch this film Phenomena. I'll still be here, so after you've seen it, you can come back anytime and I'll be very happy to discuss this film with you. Phenomena by Dario Argento. This is one of the wildest, perhaps more divisive films in the Argento canon. This is a film where Dario Argento is producing the film, so he doesn't have the benefit of, his father Salvatore or his brother Claudio to be producers. So in that sense, he has maybe a bit of free reign here. And if that's the case, then I think it really shows in the subject matter of the film, because this is one film that is just all over the place. It's all over the place. We were talking earlier about Tenebrae and about the focus of that film and its narrative complexity. And a narrative complexity like that could only have come about with a real singular focus, which is so evident in that film Tenebrae. Well, here in Phenomena, I would say that the film has kind of a myriad of foci, so to speak, and that could be to the film's benefit. It could also be seen as being to the film's detriment. But what do I mean by this? Well, I guess there are many different elements that are at play. There is this girl who is played by Jennifer Connelly, who is a schoolgirl who has this relationship, a telepathic relationship with insects. And there is also a killer on the loose in this European countryside area, kind of Swiss Transylvania type of area. Then there is a school, and there is a boarding school with girls, and also there is a kind of a scientist and his pet chimpanzee. And also there is this really wonderful Argento-like science involving the use of maggots and flies to ascertain the time of death and to try to solve the mystery of the serial killer. So you've got all these disparate elements coming, and you also have lots of intriguing scenes of violence. You have children who may or may not be what they seem, and you have close-ups of body parts and maggots and flies and really interesting optical special effects and camera work underwater. So all of this forms a portrait that is like a haphazard it's like a haphazard thing filled with great beauty and great ugliness at the same time. I didn't like this film when I saw it for the first time, and even now I have to admit that I have to force myself to be in a certain frame of mind before I watch this film, because only then can I fully submit to the absurdity and to its absurd logic, because it is a very illogical film in many respects. So I need to be in a certain frame of mind to be able to accept that absurdity, and only by means of accepting that can I then let the film take me to where it wants to take me, and then I can enjoy the ride, so to speak. So it does take a little bit of effort on my part, and I think that's an indication of my own shortcomings as a film watcher. Namely, that I need to prepare myself sort of mentally and emotionally before I watch this film. And I guess specifically what I mean by that is I need to kind of let go of any maybe preconceptions of what I think good films should be or ought to be, and just let the film be what it is, and not try to impose any of my own thoughts or agenda onto the film. It's like I shouldn't let any preconceived notions that I have act as any resistance. I shouldn't resist the film. I should let the film take me to where it should take me. So that's all I mean. And so therefore, if I have no line of resistance, then I think the film becomes a more enjoyable film watching experience for me. There are some very intriguing moments in this film, of course. There are many intriguing moments, and I think probably the film's strength is its acting. You've got the great Jennifer Connelly, who is young, and she's like a kind of very sprite-like, and she is very likable and very pretty, but she's still a kid. You know, she's not sexualized in terms of character. She's still a young child, and she's often very petulant, which is, I guess, natural for a young child to be. And she is also, she has this incredible gift of being able to, for some reason, communicate or have some kind of relationship with insects. Now, that is a wonderful, bizarre motif in a film, if ever there was one, right? Jennifer Connelly being friends with insects. So this is just, you either accept it or you don't. So I encourage you to accept it if you're on the fence, because it's a really neat concept, and only cinema could provide us with this kind of bonkers idea and set it in motion in a way that I think is really dramatically effective. And then, speaking of other characters, we have the great John McGregor. So he's played by Donald Pleasence. So Donald Pleasence, of course, he is just a wonderful, soothing presence here. You know, he's not hammy or overacting here. He's very calm, and he's very avuncular. He's quite intelligent, and he evokes this real uncle figure, but he is very smart, and he knows the dangers of the situation at hand, namely the serial killer that's at large. And he's very much into studying maggots and flies and how they react to rotting corpses and flesh, which is another very interesting aspect of this Argento film. Again, we have Argento employing a kind of Argento-like science. We've seen this in the past in other films, if you recall. For example, Bird with a Crystal Plumage. There were some pretty shaky science themes that were being dealt with there. Really shaky science themes that were dealt with in Four Flies on Grey Velvet, if you recall. And now we get this really wonderfully just bonkers concept about using maggots and flies to try to ascertain the time of death. And they've got this huge zoom in of a severed head. I'm sure there must be some theory out there in terms of maybe some kind of basis in fact, but I'm not quite sure. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not quite sure how plausible this method of forensic science is. But that being said, it is only a movie, and what a grand movie it is if it has these elements already at play, namely the relationship with insects and the use of insects to try to track down a killer. There are other characters here. There is Frau Bruckner, played by Dario Nicolodi, who is just over the top. She is hamming it up. She is I don't know if she's having fun, but she is certainly quite a character. She's explosive. She is quite volatile. She is out of her. She is quite. How should I put it? She apparently has a lot of stress because of the situation involving her son, who is a deformed child, and who is apparently committing acts of murder involving a large spike. Okay. And then we have the police inspector and some other characters. But I think those are the main three characters at play, and they form a kind of an odd little triumvirate, if you will. They're not usually together, but they form different poles of this really odd film. You've got the soothing center, avuncular, in the form of Donald Pleasence. Then you have the kind of young sprite-like child, who maybe is curious about the world, but is sometimes petulant, and therefore she has a certain energy about her, so that's Jennifer Connelly. And then on the other side, you have this really wild, over-the-top, overbearing wicked witch type of figure in the form of Frau Bruckner. So you've got this really nice dynamic at play, which is immediately recalling a kind of fairy tale dynamic, and to have this film be placed in the context of this kind of Swiss countryside or sort of European countryside makes it more of a fairy tale like feel, which is a real nice thing to have in Dario Argento films, because our Dario Argento films are essentially fairy tales about a damsel in distress and a certain villain and a danger, and how is the damsel in distress going to get out of this particular situation of distress. So that's all we have here in essence, in a nutshell. But it's done with great aplomb that undeniably this is a work of an over-the-top mad genius that is Dario Argento. I said before that in order to, I think, fully appreciate this film, I have to let go of my preconceived notions, and I have to break down any kind of resistance and just let the film take me. And I think that's a good idea, because the film starts out in a kind of fairly understandable way, and then it devolves and it just slowly explodes into complete absurdity, which is, again, this idea of dream logic being applied, which is reminiscent of earlier Argento films like Inferno in particular. But it also shows the kind of narrative explosiveness in Argento's films, which is very reminiscent, I would say, of something like Tenebrae, which starts out fairly simple but then explodes into a huge narrative cobweb, if you will. Well, here we've got it. I don't know if it's a narrative cobweb as much as it is like a huge, just a mass explosion of ideas are probably quite disparate, and I'm not sure if it all hangs together well in the end, but they are quite disparate, and it creates a kind of just a huge explosive mix of things and ideas. So we've got, for example, the Inga, the chimpanzee who is trying to seek revenge, and she happens to find a razor blade in the trash. Okay, by this point you've got to just let the film take you, and you've got to go with the flow. And then what? And then you go into Frau Bruckner's house, and then you've got the whole thing with the telephone and the pills, and she's so insistent that Jennifer Connelly take these pills, and then she just hits her over the head, and Jennifer Connelly tries to escape through this long tunnel, and she suddenly is in this huge basement pit, and she falls into this pit filled with maggots and body parts and sludge and slime, and it's probably just so foul and smelly. It's one of the most disgusting things in an Argento film. And then you've got chained to the wall Inspector Geiger, and he's all bloodied and mauled and mangled. And then you've got Frau Bruckner coming in. So it's Inspector Geiger, right? That terrible, terrible scene of him. He's chained. In order to free himself from the chains, he's got to just smash his own thumb. Remember that? That is just a wonderful special effect, if ever there was one. And it's just so raw and just unnerving to watch, is it not? This reminds me again of Argento always showing us the kind of the bone crunch and showing us the spit and the spittle. Earlier in the film, we saw Jennifer Connelly kind of spit out or trying to throw up the pill that she swallowed because she's very suspicious of it. So we actually see the vomit coming out. This is very reminiscent of Deep Red, when we see spit and spittle come out, and also Cat o' Nine Tails. So Argento is focusing in on these elements that I think can help us, the viewer, better associate and sympathize with them, because we can understand the palpable nature of this kind of unnerving, uncomfortable sense that is like fluid and body, let's say spit and spittle coming out. And the same is true for thumbs. And I mean, I can think of my thumb here, and I think if I go like this, already it kind of hurts. So I can just imagine someone just going full force on your thumb like that, and just breaking it in order to mangle your hand to the point where you can get the cuff off. Pure Argento right there. There is then the whole thing with the little child, and then we realize that the little child is disfigured, and that the implication is that this child is the product of the rape that occurred between Frau Bruckner and an inmate in a mental asylum. Wow! Already my mind is exploding just by trying to explain what's going on. And then this child then tries to kill Jennifer Connelly with this huge spike, and then chases him onto the boat in the middle of the lake, and then suddenly Jennifer Connelly screams, summon these flies to try to come, and they come and they cover the boy, and then they start to decompose his flesh, and he falls into the water, and there's a huge explosion, and the fire is all over, and then underwater the decomposed rotting body of the boy is trying to grab her, and then isn't this amazing? And then she gets out, and then suddenly there's the guy, Morris Shapiro, who just comes out of nowhere, and he's like, oh, here I am to save the day. And boom, you've got another decapitation with this huge thing. Frau Bruckner's, what is this thing that she's carrying? It's like this huge like piece of steel, a flat piece of steel. I don't know what the heck she's thinking, but she just very timely just does a little thing like that and just tosses his head off. Another decapitation in an Argento film, I might add. And then we have the final confrontation between Frau Bruckner and Jennifer Connelly, but Frau Bruckner just can't stop talking, right? She just can't stop talking. She's just got to talk and talk and talk, just enough for Inga, the razor-wielding chimp, to come behind and just start slashing away, and then she's on the ground and just slashes away on her face, and then that's the end. Boom! Boom! Head explodes. Just head explodes. And when your head is exploding, you either have to say, I like the film or I don't like the film. And it's your choice, really. I don't begrudge anyone who says that he or she doesn't like this film, because I'm with you. I've been there. I've been to that place where I don't like this film. But there comes a point where you just have to say, a film is a film. And I think also this film comes at a point in time where now Argento and his career, I would say, is arguably not so good as it once was. And so this film, Phenomena, I think is comparatively better than Argento's later works and his more recent works. So I think that helps to make this film better in my eyes, hindsight. And therefore it elevates it more in my eyes, and it helps me to enjoy it more, because I realize that it's from a period in the career of Dario Argento where he was most creative and he was trying to take risks. This film is the definition of risk-taking in cinema, and arguably he falls on his face, but for many points he does not, and he succeeds very well. There are certain camera movements and camera techniques that are still to this day unbelievable. Close-ups on flies, and the flies like eyes, you see the little dots. And these are real flies too. These aren't fake. These are real flies. You see the close-ups on these. It's like a National Geographic video, that kind of quality. And you've got these zooms, unnatural zooms into body parts and maggots, and then you've got this ugliness and just violence, and you've got this weird balance between ugliness and beauty. So you've got these ugly maggots and flies and body parts on the one hand, you've got the lovely Jennifer Connelly and the soothing avuncular Donald Pleasance on the other hand. So you've got this nice balance of differing poles, and then you have the idea of these differing poles being it's emblematic in the music itself. So on the one hand you have these calm, soothing sort of prog rock type of 80s prog rock type of scores, synthesizers, the Simonetti angle, and then you've got the other side, which is more the heavy metal driving, just real relentless beats that are very that cause a kind of agitation in the state of mind of the viewer. So you've got these really nice tensions that are occurring between beauty and ugliness. And so I think that makes this film a bit messy, but on the whole, quite an overall interesting and very peculiar film in the canon of Dario Argento. It is divisive, as I say, because I think you can fall in one of these two camps very reasonably. You can either like it or you don't like it. And so I think it really depends on one's mood when one is watching it. It certainly does for me. So, but it is Halloween and it is October, so let's try to be, let me try to be as generous as I can when I watch a Dario Argento film, especially one from the mid-'80s like Phenomena. I should say one thing though before I go is the chimp. Maybe my comments suggested a bit of kind of a mocking tone towards this chimp, and I really didn't mean that if I sounded that way, because I think the chimp gives a really beautiful performance. When Donald Pleasance's character dies, you've got the moment when the chimp is just there, just so sad and just trying to tug on his arm, but he's dead, and he's there silent, and suddenly the chimp becomes vengeance, and just you see the wrath in the eyes, and then finally the release when the chimp finally kills Frau Bruckner, and he holds the bloodied razor in her hand, and then just drops it just so gently, and then you've got that wonderful look on the chimp's face. Gosh, I mean, would it be terrible for me to say that I think the chimp gives one of the best performances in this film? Really does. It's so moving. And well done, Inga. I guess it's one of the most surprising things about this film. Now that I think about it, I'm talking about the film Phenomena, and I'm giving praise to the performance of the chimp. But I guess this is just to show that for Argento and Argento's films, really, at this point in time, the sky's the limit as to where this guy is going to go. And if Phenomena is any example, then who knows what's to come. But of course, we do know what's to come, do we not? Because the next film that he released after Phenomena is, of course, the very famous film called Opera. So I would like next time, my friends, to talk about this film Opera with you. And if you don't mind, I would like to talk in detail about it, because it is a film that means quite a lot to me. So until then, my friends, I hope you are having a great Halloween and you are watching a lot of scary films. Until we meet again, take care. Cheers.